Hey everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you're watching this. Hopefully it's on Monday. If it's not, please make sure you watch this before our class on Wednesday. But hello, hope everyone had a great weekend. So let's find out what we'll be doing this week. So we're back to learning some new elements of the art, which are the building blocks to all art making. Our central question is the same as it has been. How do artists use the elements of art to convey a meaning, message, or thought into their artwork? So we've worked on lines, we've worked with shapes, colors, and this week we'll be focusing on two new elements. So let's find out. So this week, after our Wednesday class, the goal for everyone is to be able to practice creating value, so shading, with ink techniques that create texture. Don't worry if you don't have a pen, you can totally do this with a pencil too, and I'll go over that more when we start our drawing demo on Wednesday. So let's do a quick little review. So what are the elements of art? Remember, there are 7 elements that are essential to art making. Not every artwork features all 7 of these elements clearly, and that's okay. It's important to know what these elements are so we can describe and talk about art, whether it's about your own or a piece that you like. So the elements are line, shape, color, value, texture, space, and form. And we're learning about 2 more. So by the end of this week, you'll know 5 of them. So value. Let me move my face so you can actually see the image. Value is something hopefully everyone is familiar with by now, since we did do a little shading practice early in the year. Oh. So value is lightness or darkness of a surface, shape, or object. It's shading. You can call it shading when you talk about art, or the value, like how artists are using value. This image should be very familiar to all of us. Our new one is texture. And texture is how something feels or looks like it would feel to the touch. So artists can use both actual texture, so how things actually feel in real life, and implied texture, so how things look like they feel. So think about like collage artwork. Sometimes artists will use different materials. It's not always paper, right? Maybe they'll use like cardboard or something soft, and that is actual texture. They're putting real texture on it. You can think about maybe the wall in your room. Most walls have those little like orange peel looking bumps on them. That's an actual texture. And an implied texture is what you're actually seeing in this photo right here, where artists use different lines and curved lines to create movement and this feeling of something soft. It looks kind of like maybe it could be braided hair or a weaving. And that's implied texture because they're using a drawing material or an art material to make something flat look like it's real and feels like something. Hopefully that makes sense, but we'll go over it a little more, and feel free to ask any questions during class as well. So let's learn about some artists who use both value and texture together in their work, if not more of the elements, but we're specifically going to look at those 2. And I've organized our slideshow this week, so we're learning about the oldest artist to a new one, or the newest one. So our first artist is Jose Guadalupe Aguilar, and he was a Mexican political lithographer, which is a type of printmaking. If you don't know what printmaking is, it's kind of like making a big stamp. You know how a stamp, if you look at the part with the image is raised compared to the surface. So there's a type of art making where people will carve things out, put it onto ink, and then put it onto paper. So that's what he did. And he was a political lithographer to create popular illustrations that influenced many Latin American artists and cartoonists. His work was political, satirical, and was really popular. So it was in newspapers, pamphlets, and posters, and I believe he actually had his own newspaper company. So he was very active in political and social issues, especially during the era where he was alive, because there was the Mexican Revolution and they had a dictator during that time. So it was before the revolution happened. And there was this huge um, rift between the rich people and the poor people. And feel free to click that link to learn more about him. He has a really interesting history. So his work, he's well known for creating these skeleton cartoons. In Mexican culture, it's not a weird thing to talk about death. Death is viewed very differently. And he used those ideas to create artwork that was very true to his culture's roots. At that time when he was alive, art was being really influenced by European artists. So by focusing on these skeleton characters and their outfits, he was creating art that represented who he was and his beliefs. These are more, you can see these skeletons are doing like normal daily things, but they're telling a story. Very narrative artworks. They're not just like one portrait necessarily. So it's really interesting. And his work is mostly black and white, so you can see the value. Like if you look at this barrel, it's darker right here, and then it gets lighter. And the technique that you would use to create value with this type of art making naturally creates a sense of texture, even if it's just a little bit. So that's our first artist. Second artist, her name is Lorna Simpson. Lorna Simpson studied photography at the School of Visual Arts, New York, and went on to get her MFA, which is Masters of Fine Arts, from the University of California, San Diego. Her photography evolved from conceptual work to works that challenge societal norms like gender, identity, culture, and memory. Simpson often worked with large multi-panel photographs and eventually moved on to film and video as well. So she works with a lot of different materials and even did some collage work, but her work really focuses on identity and a woman's place in society, specifically Black women, and you can see that a lot in her photographs. Also, feel free to go to this presentation and click on this link to learn more about her. Here are some examples of her work. These are more collagey, multimedia, because you see that she's using a photograph. This is a real woman, this is a real woman, but bits of her are cut off and other elements are added. So in this piece on the left, we have strokes of paint, which creates its own type of texture. It might not be something realistic because it is paint strokes, but it's not flat. Like we want to touch it. And in the photo on the right, she cut out the background of this photograph and placed it on top of a cloud, and both are commentary on Black women's hair. So this is more of her photography collage work as well. I really like the one on the left with the pop of color. So think back to what we learned about color in the past few weeks and maybe why she chose those two. But there's clearly so much shading being used, even if it's not drawing. It's just how the photograph is being taken. So her work is super cool. Our third artist is actually the artist that we will be drawing inspiration from for our next project, which we won't start this week. It's a short week, so I'm not going to make everyone do a big project. But his name is Kirby Rosales. He is an illustrator based in the Philippines who works with mostly ink, like fine liner markers, which if I have any, kind of like these pens with the really thin tip. Can you see that? Yeah. And markers. So art was originally a personal hobby of his, but it became his work once he was recognized by design blogs and magazines. He has published 11 illustrated books, including many coloring books. So feel free to click on this link to learn more about him as well. He also has an Instagram, so he's on social media. He is very active and creates a lot of fan art. So you'll see some of that in the next few slides. But his work is super detailed, and he just uses pens to create a lot of texture and value. And that's something that we'll be learning on Wednesday. We're just doing a really small activity. So his work might be really, it's going to be really cool, but it might be overwhelming to see, especially because he is going to be our inspiration for our next project. But please don't let it scare you off from trying some of the new techniques on Wednesday, okay? Let's just look at his art. So this is actually a spread from his first coloring book. I believe it's called Anamorphia. And on the right, I zoomed in a little bit so you kind of see more of the detail because he has a lot of things going on. So you see a leopard, I think, maybe a cheetah, but I think leopard. And then towards the body, it's filled with doodles. So you can think back to our doodle and line Zentangle project. But if you look at the zoomed in one, you can see these areas that are darker against the flat white areas, and that's how he's using the ink to create some value and shading. And then there are even small sections that are completely black, and that just adds some depth. So we're going to look at that more and think about how to shade with ink. So here's another example of his super detailed work. Again, all just pens, inks. These little strokes of lines right here are a technique to create texture and value, and he uses it really subtly. So it looks like it's truly a part of the artwork, which is really cool. As for fan art, this is a Studio Ghibli or Miyazaki like collage compilation fan art, the characters from all different movies. And again, on the right, it's more zoomed in, so you can kind of see some more detailed work. We'll be learning about 5 different techniques, but I just want you to focus on 3 on Wednesday, and we're going to use them in a project later. For those of you who might not have a pen, don't worry, you can totally do this with pencil too. We just have to be very thoughtful with how we're using our materials. But I'm going to show you the techniques on Wednesday, so please come to class prepared with what you want to work with. All of what you have to do for Monday and Tuesday is in the Google Classroom, but as a review, you'll be working on your covers for your Elements of Art foldable. So work on your value and texture cover if you haven't yet. You don't have to turn it in this week. It's mostly for you. So just get it done. It's going to help you in the future because we're going to do some more writing exercises as we look at art. So get it done so it's always next to you for class. All right, check the We Got a Glance for more information in the Google Classroom, and I will see you on Wednesday. Thank you.